Las cosas buenas llegan de 3 en 3, como mi SUV de 3 filas que lleva a mis 3 hijos a 3 prácticas deportivas en 3 partes distintas de la ciudad. Por suerte cargo mi gasolina Premium Synergy Supreme Plus en las estaciones Exxon y Mobil. Mantiene mi motor 3 veces más limpio y ahorra gasolina por más millas. Porque tan pronto como termina la temporada, comienza la siguiente.
Sigue adelante. Encuentra una estación en Exxon.com. Gasolina Synergy Supreme Plus en comparación con la gasolina Synergy regular en motores de inyección de combustible. Los beneficios se basan en el uso continuo y podrían variar.
Get softer, smoother, and more even-toned skin after just one use with the new Gentle Exfoliating line from Cetaphil. Formulated with a unique triple acid blend that promotes surface skin cell renewal, these gentle chemical exfoliators remove dead skin cells and refine skin's texture while hydrating, resulting in softer, smoother, more even-looking skin. Shop the new Cetaphil Gentle Exfoliating line in the face and body aisles at your local Target store or online at Cetaphil.com.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. You can follow the Red Treehouse on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Red Treehouse Pod. And if you have a scary story or topic you'd like me to feature on an upcoming episode of the Red Treehouse, email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. Content warning. This episode includes descriptions of domestic violence and murder. Listener discretion is advised. When you think about Yellowstone National Park, what comes to mind? Rugged mountains, breathtaking views, Old Faithful, supervolcano. If so, you're not wrong. Our family visited Yellowstone last month, and what I saw was indescribable. Everything was just beautiful. The multicolored thermal pools, including the Grand Prismatic, the barren landscape of Mammoth Hot Springs, the majesty of Old Faithful, and the sheer magnitude of the mountain ranges. It was overwhelming and breathtaking. And it felt like you were a small speck in a huge landscape. A quick shout out to my father-in-law for putting together the trip of a lifetime. This mini episode is a thank you note. For the first few days of our trip, we stayed at the Old Faithful Snow Lodge, a short 5-minute walk from the Old Faithful Geyser. As we pulled up to the Snow Lodge, I noticed an older, much darker building just off to the side, the Old Faithful Inn. In the daytime, the inn is imposing, a dark, castle-like structure that is well over 100 years old. At night, the inn is menacing, as it feels like it's watching your every movement. And, as we settled into our room at the Snow Lodge, another word came to mind: haunted. Most people go to gift shops to buy coffee mugs, shot glasses, or magnets. But I went to the gift shop to find books on the ghosts of Yellowstone. And I hit the jackpot. Not only were they helpful in giving me a treasure trove of stories, but they also piqued my interest to do a deep dive on the internet to see if I could find as many details as possible. Want to read these books for yourself? You can find the source info for this episode in the show notes. I'll retell the most famous Yellowstone ghost story in my own words, using these resources as a guide. To date, I've not done a good old-fashioned ghost story episode. Well, here it is. In today's mini-episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore the most famous ghost story from Yellowstone National Park. What darkness lies behind the majestic beauty of the world's first national park? And who is the ghost that haunts the Old Faithful Inn. I'll share the story. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. It seems like the words historic and haunted fit together like hand in glove. Maybe we just naturally assume old buildings have been around long enough for bad things to happen and ghosts to take up residence. What's fascinating about Yellowstone, though, is most of the scary stories and tragedies have occurred outside. Everything from accidental drownings, falls, hypothermia, falling trees and rocks, fires, animal attacks, being boiled alive in a thermal pool, and murder have all happened at Yellowstone over the past 150 years. But what about actual, real-life ghost encounters? Perhaps the most famous ghost story is that of the Headless Bride who haunts the Old Faithful Inn. Before we dive into the story, it's important to understand the layout of the area she is said to haunt. Everything about the Old Faithful Inn screams haunted, especially at night. When you walk in the main entrance of the Old Faithful Inn, you're greeted with a towering common area. And I'm not even sure towering is an adequate description. The common area is over 90 feet high and spans over 7 stories. A true log cabin, it is held together by a beautiful and complex web of log columns and beams, with balconies on multiple sides. A staircase to the left of a giant clock takes visitors to each floor, where there are tables and sitting areas on each balcony. You can take the staircase up several flights, but eventually, it'll be blocked by a locked gate. Beyond the gate, the stairway to the crow's nest. The story goes like this. In 1915 in New York City, a wealthy business owner had a rebellious teenage daughter who considered herself a, quote, modern woman, end quote, and resisted her father's attempts at an arranged marriage with a man from another wealthy family. Initially unbeknownst to him, his daughter had fallen in love with a servant who worked in their home. Despite her father's pleas, and after trying to convince her the servant was a gold digger, the daughter and the servant got married. Despite his heartbreak, the father devised a plan. He would give his daughter a substantial wedding gift, but with 2 conditions. 1, she would not receive any additional support from the family. And 2, the new couple would have to leave New York forever. The intention was clear. By cutting off his daughter, he was also letting the servant know there was no inheritance or job opportunity with the family business. The plan seemed foolproof, and he expected the servant to back out of the wedding. Instead, it backfired, and his daughter agreed to the wedding anyway. The couple followed through with the wedding and traveled to Yellowstone for their honeymoon. After checking into the Old Faithful Inn, they were given the keys to room 127. By then, the young wife had started to see the reality of her situation. On the way to Yellowstone, her husband spent lavishly on alcohol and gambling, and they quickly ran low on money. While at the Old Faithful Inn, the newlywed couple fought loudly and constantly. staff at the inn heard them from outside their room. Soon enough, the couple ran out of money and was unable to pay for their stay at the inn. The young bride reached out to her father to send more money, but his answer was no. One night, the couple had an especially loud and violent argument, and the husband slammed the door and stormed out of the inn. He would not return, and no one would see him again. After a few days, the staff at the inn grew worried. They'd not seen the young bride in several days. Concerned, they opened the room to make sure she was okay. What they saw was shocking. The room was torn up, furniture overturned, bedding ripped from the mattress, clothing strewn about the floor, and the bride was nowhere to be found. A staff member worked her way to the bathroom, and within seconds, a blood-curdling scream filled the air. In the bathtub was the bride, covered in blood and missing her head. The police searched the hotel but had no idea where the husband or the bride's head went. Eventually, they went up to the crow's nest, where they were met with both a terrible smell and a horrible sight. In there, they found the bride's severed and decomposing head. Over the years, guests have reported hearing strange noises and footsteps, and seeing a faint, white apparition walking the staircase of the crow's nest. The bride, it seems, with her severed head in her hands. As I mentioned earlier, the crow's nest is blocked by a locked gate and sign, and while it's not accessible to the public, a lucky few are able to go up to the staircase to the pinnacle of the Old Faithful Inn. A side note, if you're planning a trip to Yellowstone and want to get into the crow's nest, you can request a tour. Just be sure to do it as far in advance as possible, as reservations are limited and securing a tour is difficult. Over the years, other guests have reported seeing a variety of other apparitions in the Old Faithful Inn. One evening, after everyone had cleared out of the hotel, a staff member was up late reading a book. Sometime around midnight, he heard a strange noise in the lobby. Thinking someone had snuck into the inn, he rushed to the lobby, but saw no one. Seeing no one on the main level, he scanned the balconies, his eyes moving upwards as he cleared each floor. Within seconds, he came to the staircase leading to the crow's nest. There, he saw a woman, wearing a white wedding dress and holding her head. He watched, mesmerized and horrified, as she made her way down the stairs into the room where she was murdered. One guest who stayed in room 2 reported seeing a female apparition dressed in clothing from the 1800s, floating above the bed and staring down at her. Another guest reported seeing a fire extinguisher, which was securely attached to the wall, rotate several times. And still other guests have reported seeing doors opening and closing on their own, reported seeing ghostly apparitions walking up and down the staircase, and items moving, untouched, along countertops. As is the case with any ghost story, it's near impossible to prove or disprove the story of the Headless Bride. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? We don't know for sure that it's a made-up story, and that leaves the possibility that it could be true. Our trip to the Old Faithful Inn was uneventful. We didn't see or hear anything unusual. But as we walked the short distance from the inn to the snow lodge, the darkness of the evening settled in, and we turned to face the foreboding structure behind us and take a few pictures. There, in the uppermost part of the inn, we snapped a photo of a ghost-like figure seemingly floating. I've posted it to the Red Treehouse Instagram page. Head there and tell me what you think. As we close this mini episode of the Red Treehouse, we still have these questions. What darkness lies behind the majestic beauty of the world's first national park? And what would you do if you came face to face with the Headless Bride? I've shared the story. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.